Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and once again it is time for a bench press day, and this vlog is going to be pretty long because of the amount of work that I'm doing. This is the one downside to the amount of volume I'm doing with all these smaller movements. By doing single joint stuff for, biceps, triceps, forearms, delts, all this stuff, it makes for long vlogs. But the cut is coming along. Obviously, I'm looking leaner and leaner. We still have to get the waistline smaller, which again, as you guys know, and I always make this clear, because if I don't, all right, this is kind of funny. If I don't, people have literally come into vlogs and said, well, why are you so soft around the waistline? Why are you out of shape? And they don't realize it's still loose skin there from 100 pounds of fat loss quite a few years ago. So, but that is, I think, slowly tightening up, and it'll continue to do so. All right, so the name of the game, and this has kind of come up in the topics, and people are like, why aren't you doing really heavy top sets or singles? And it's simply put, psychological reasons. I like that style of training. I think it brings a lot to the table. The problem is I'm a strength athlete, and because now I'm going to focus for a while on actual physique and building lean tissue while cutting and really focus on body composition, I can't get hung up in the numbers game. And by doing this, it lets me step back and do harder versions of the lifts. It lets me accept that I'm not going to be repping 315 for work sets on the bench. All right. So notice I'm benching flat back now. I'm doing nice, good pauses. I've gotten though to where I can take the wrist straps off. I'm really finding the grip positions and the ability to grip it right without the wrist straps, where we aren't getting any wrist inflammation. So again, learning to dig in a little deeper with some of that stuff. It'll be good for when I do eventually do some max benching again later. So right now it's set to 10 on the bench. And I may or may not go heavier than 225. I might see if I can just increase quality volume with 225, but notice as it gets more difficult, like maybe that last rep, sometimes I like to pause it a long time. Why? It creates additional fatigue and brings me much closer to failure. And that's kind of one of the things that we can do, and I think people don't always think about if you're trying to get very, very close to failure on a set, down to 0 reps in reserve. Sometimes when you get real close, doing the last rep in a way that's more difficult. A lot of times people like to cheat to try to get more reps. And I would say this can ensure, like, let's say you want your 10 rep sets, and maybe it's a weight you could possibly do 12 reps with, but you want to do 3 by 10 with it, and you really want to make it count. When you get to the end, those really long pauses will increase the difficulty, right? It will make that last rep more difficult. And it's something that I do a lot with, especially on lifts that I don't want to risk getting pinned on. Because a pull-up or a row or a curl, it's not a big deal. You just, when you reach kind of failure, you just stick at the bottom, you just turn loose. People can't even always tell you failed, right? On a lot of the pressing and tricep movements, I just don't want to get pinned. So by making the last rep a little more difficult, we can ensure, again, higher set quality without literally failing. So it will bring us right up to 0 reps in reserve, because a lot of times that longer pause at the bottom of the bench, the bottom of a tricep extension, creates enough fatigue that is your last rep, that if you tried to do another rep, you might fail. So it gets us real close. All right, on the incline, I started to feel like today, and again, it could be because of the small calorie deficit, I felt like I was running a little bit out of steam on the volume, because the flat benching, we got all the target reps. On incline, the first set felt good. I got my 10, and then after that, it was like 9 and 8 reps or so for the next 2, and they felt challenging. They felt challenging with that. So again, work capacity I want to continue to develop in the chest, and I think for me, pressing work capacity is always an issue, right? I've run into issues with it, but again, it'll be good for my chest development to continue to develop that, because the ability to repeatedly load that mechanical tension is a good thing. And some of it has to do with just my general shoulder immobility and working on it and forcing my chest now into slightly deeper stretches than it's used to. It is generating a lot of fatigue. But again, hopefully building muscle mass with that as we go. All right, the rows is kind of the same thing. Yes, I've rowed heavier dumbbells, but after doing all the pull-ups in between the supersets, These are more fatiguing, so now I'm actually using, really for me, a lightweight 95 pounds. Do sets of 12-bit stretch, and then the same thing when I start getting near the end. Sometimes that last rep or so, I like to pause it just briefly at the bottom, create some extra fatigue, right? Create some extra fatigue. Again, bringing the set quality up. And that's what we're trying to do with this, building muscle, building muscle, building muscle. And what I will point out with all of this, and again, I have to do this long vlogs. I got to talk about something, right? Because I do my vlogs year round no matter what. I trimmed these down as short as I could, taking out most of the walk up and downs to the weights and the setups. It's still like 18, 19 minutes. Like I trimmed it all in and then threw it in. It's like, oh man. As I've always said, muscle raises your strength potential. And many researchers have said this. Many really good experts have said this. Look, a lot of your bodybuilders could just go over and power lift, and in no time they would be world champions. There's truth to that. All right? Build muscle, build muscle, build muscle. Plus, again, it gives me a break for a while from the heavy lifting, because I've done max rep sets or training maxes year round for years and years now. And I'm not big on periodization, because again, I always say we should be training for hypertrophy year round. That's my problem with periodization. Not that we can't cycle our top sets. It's the idea that we need blocks without hypertrophy work. I think that's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. We should be trying to get bigger all the time, or at least preserve the muscle that we have if we're getting leaner. But right now, everything is just focused upon the highest quality hypertrophy that I can get. I'm trying to develop every muscle through the entire body to the point where, again, I'm doing delt work, forearm work, calf work now. Again, get as jacked as possible. It will raise the strength ceiling, because again, if I build my pecs, build my triceps, all of that stuff way up, what happens? We go back over to some arching, optimizing grip. You don't start doing some heavy singles again, the bench skyrockets. And, not that I agree with everything someone like Dr. Mike says, but I've seen even Dr. Mike point out that he's taken powerlifters and run them on months of hypertrophy only work, and then come in and test their PRs, and sometimes they set lifetime PRs. Why? Size raises your strength ceiling. And I'm not saying we don't care about strength, because progressive overload matters in terms of mechanical tension here. In other words, we either need to be, over time, either increasing rep or increasing either weight or reps, right, with the exact same form and range of motion. So again, that's the idea. And that's kind of the point with some of this too. I can take even some of these top sets, and I can either keep this weight the same, or I could just keep adding reps in the form of quality reps, right? Quality reps where we're getting full ranges of motion, stretches. So I could do that on all these. I could do that with the squat, bench, deadlift, pull-ups, whatever we need to do. Even those things that are 10s now, what happens if they do get to 20? Well, then that would be ridiculous. That would represent an enormous change in hypertrophy. It would be an enormous change for an advanced lifter. So this is the thing we have to look at too. People are like, oh, do we abandon progressive overload at this point? No. Understand that it's a long-term process, right? Progression can take months or years once you reach this point. So, you look at it and say, okay, so stuff I'm doing for quality 10 rep sets now, how long does it take to get them to 15? And if I did, would I be bigger and stronger? And the answer is yes. But we're not noobs anymore, guys. A lot of us, we've been doing this for years and years, right? Doing this for years. Now, I think the area I have the most potential for growth in is my arms, because they've been lagging, and now I'm really focusing on, the longest range of motion, stretch work, really, really working those muscles deeply, trying to get all the available muscle fibers. Okay, so again, you're seeing even with these curls, taking everything I was doing with the other style where we lean forward, get the stretch, because people have argued, well, you may be missing some muscle fibers by not having that shoulder extension, but I also don't want to lose tension up at the top. So again, I'm being careful with where I position the elbows, and it makes it a lot harder, obviously. Okay. But what I'm doing then with the arm and shoulder work here, it's all done as a superset. So these are done, that's what everything that you're seeing here is done in order. Nothing is done out of order. Again, allows you to get good rest times to repeat performance while keeping the density high, keeping conditioning and stuff up. Okay? Because you can take 3 minutes. You can take an easy 3 minutes between the main work sets if you're doing 2 other exercises in between. So it's the same with the benching and the pull-ups. You know, you do a set of pull-ups, you're still working, but you're not working the primary movers. You can come back and bench again in 3 minutes. You can incline again after rowing. So it's the same thing with these smaller movements because they're totally different muscles. You can do up to 3 exercises just fine, and it's not going to impede the performance because the primary movers are different. So you can do a tricep, then a bicep, then a shoulder. Just what I'm doing. So again, you'll notice that last rep, I slow that tempo down a little bit and then pause it to make it really difficult. When I start feeling the fatigue building, and then that way I don't have to take that quite to failure to make sure that I'm working really hard. Also, someone brought up on my things, a couple of guys are like, we bench way less than you do, and yet, you know, we can do as much on or more on tricep extensions. What's going on with that? But as again, you got to look at number one, are you as strict as me? Are your arms as long as me? Because what are we looking at for weight moved? Moment arms. In other words, moving 40 pounds, right? Let's just say 40 pounds against a 12-inch lever versus a 24-inch lever. Well, it's twice as hard if you're swinging it, right, on a 24-inch lever. So every inch of your arm length can make a difference. So I would point out to some of those guys, you might have shorter arms than me. And if you do, you're obviously going to be able to move more weight with the same amount of muscle. Okay? It's just basic physics. So that can be a factor, and I'm not saying that is what it is, but I point out to some guys, you know, what's your wingspan like? That could be a factor. It could be a strictness factor. I mean, I can cheat on some of these movements and move more weight, but I'm trying to really focus on using the biceps, using the triceps, taking them through a full range of motion as to what I can do. I mean, I'd like to get these extensions eventually a little deeper. This is pretty good for me. Just making sure I have the shoulder health to do it. But I think over time I will even do these deeper. Rather than try to increase weight, I might try to see if I can stretch deeper over time. Might be the way to go, because these I'm going a hair deeper than I was slightly lighter when I had a 210s on each side instead of a 25. But I'm also losing reps, 3-4 reps a set. Okay. So again, looking at rep quality, looking at building muscle. And this is still always what I've kind of said, you know, train hard on your big movements, train to good fatigue, and then really come in and pump with your smaller exercises to bring up weak points. But for me, it's kind of everything. We're training everything other than pecs and lats is weak point training, because those don't need it. My back is big. You know what? I can do pull-ups, rows, and deadlifts, and I'm good. But it really is the arms and everything that need work, arms and shoulders. And I feel like even with that, even my chest will grow from it. I feel like my chest is technically bigger than my arms at this point. But if my triceps get stronger from all this stuff, all my pressing will probably go up. But I think these angles here, I think we're definitely seeing where the cutting is going. It's coming along, you know, slowly but surely. You know, and that's the other thing. What happens when powerlifters cut down? This happens all the time. People are like, wow, you guys are really dense under that fluff. And yeah, that's kind of normal. I mean, years and years of heavy lifting is going to build a lot of muscle density, a lot of maturity, a lot of myofibrillar growth. And myofibrillar growth is hard. It's solid muscle. So, you know, as we cut down, yeah, we tend to look pretty hard, sometimes even at higher body fats than we should. That's kind of normal. I've observed that over the years. Right? I've observed that over the years. But then it's also the trick of, do we bring up those show muscles that make us look smaller? You know, it's a lack of bicep and stuff. You'll see in strength athletes, makes them look proportionally maybe not as jacked as they are. So again, that's the things that we have to fix. It's the things that we have to work on. And I'm in the doing right now, putting in the work, doing the stuff that needs to be done. All right, the pullovers, obviously, like I said last time, I went back down to the 45 and I'm really focusing on that stretch. Again, I kind of pushed it to just a little bit to where I started to chase in numbers, and I stepped back and said, okay, get the ego back in check. Don't use the 55, use the 45, work on pausing, maybe not dropping the hips as much. Let's get as much tension as we can at that stretch position. Be a good idea. All right, the behind the back wrist curls, and I'm actually doing those because they feel a little easier overall on wrists and everything. And it's fine. A lot of people, I've seen a lot of arguments in forearm and grip training circles about standing versus seated on the bench. Point of major contention. But there's been plenty of old school guys who did those standing runs like that with some pretty big weights and built really big forearms. So, I'm just going to run with it. Plus, I'm not having to set up multiple sets of dumbbell weights. It lets me just get through my circuit really quick here. Right? We get through that circuit. So again, doing the reverse wrist curls, I'm doing them on the bench. That really, because I'm not worried about wrist so much, because you're not loading them as heavy. I'm not worried about getting it into position so much. It works fine. So I'm doing those across the bench. But they felt fine seated the other way. I just felt like maybe it'd be better to do them like this. Do I think at the end of the day it matters that much? No, because I already have big forearms. We're just coming in and doing some extra work and making sure that my forearms get bigger. Right? Again, bigger forearms will probably help my curling. It'll probably help all my other stuff. It'll probably help my bench, my deadlift, But I think definitely possibly bench potential, right? There is something to be said for big forearms improving your bench. I've seen many an old school strong-ass lifter point that out. So why not? Plus, again, anything I can add anywhere to my arms, given my proportions, would be good. So why not work on everything? Biceps, triceps, forearms, all of it. Let's just get all of it as big as I possibly can. Right? Let's get all of it as big as I possibly can, and then we'll get my arms caught up to my torso. So it's going to be direct work for biceps, triceps, wrist flexors, wrist extensors. Let's just hit everything. Although it has come up, people are like, what about the hammer grip stuff? I'm like, yeah, but I'm doing all those pull-ups and then I'm doing all those dumbbell rows. I don't know that area is really being neglected. Could I maybe work some hammer curls in? Sure. I feel like that area gets 12 sets a week already. It really is the biceps and other stuff that I think lacks the most. And if anything, I'd consider adding another type of curl back in, like the dumbbell curls I was doing. It's just that I have so much volume with small stuff anyways. It just seems silly to work a second curl in right now. These workouts are long already. They're really, really long. And as far as the tricep goes, I feel like the combination, because I'm doing all that pressing, I feel like the combination of the laying extension and the pullover both hit that long head. So we're probably right at around a sufficient place for that. But, I might need to work some band work in just to get the extra volume if it's not quite enough. But I'm going to give it a little bit of time. Let's see how it goes. All right, let's just run with it. But very productive workout. It was tough to get through all of it, but it felt good, in a good place with it. So I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.